Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you all for coming along and joining us tonight. And welcome to Addressing Challenging Behavior. I am going to now share my screen. So if you can't see it, please let me know in the chat. Okay, so it looks like everyone can see it. Great. Okay, so before we get started, I will do a little quick run through on some of the functionality of Zoom, just to ensure you have the best possible experience. This session will be recorded. It's right now recording, so you can view it in the future as well. I'll be sending the link to the recording to you after today's session, probably tomorrow. And so there is a closed captioning available, and you should be able to turn that on. I put like a little visual of how that looks like. It's a little CC button on the bottom of your Zoom. Should be, you can see it on the right-hand side of this slide. And tonight, for us to interact and chat amongst ourselves, please use the chat to leave comments or ask any questions that you may have throughout the session. I will be sure to pause after each slide and check that. But that being said, like your overall questions, there is a Q&A function of the webinar, and I would really appreciate it if you use that function so we can get to your questions at the end of the session. There is some dedicated time for your questions if they're not addressed throughout the webinar. And please know that we really do appreciate your feedback and use it to improve future workshops. I will share a link to for the evaluation of this session at the end of the webinar. You can either do it right away or you can do it later, but just want you to know that we really do appreciate your feedback. And again, thank you so much for being here at this time, quite late. I really appreciate that. So our topic tonight is addressing challenging behavior. This workshop is designed for families who are new to Nest. So we will go over how Nest understands and responds to children's behavior and how we collaborate to create supportive environments so that children can feel safe and connected and learn. Also, I want to be sure to mention that the purpose of today's webinar is a general understanding of how at Nest we view and address behavior and student needs, but we really encourage you to connect with your schools to discuss your children's needs and collaborate with them better. You know them very well, obviously, but your school also are getting to know them or knows them already. So it's better to really connect with them with this regard. And we're just going to have like an overview of how we address behavior in general. So a little bit about me. I am Yalda Heshmati. I am one of the instructional support consultants at the Nest Support Project. We provide consultations to Nest schools and facilitate professional development and workshops for school staff and for families like this one. Our plan for this evening is to, first of all, talk about how we look at behavior through the Nest lens and how we define it and how we respond to it to support our students in the classrooms and in the therapy spaces that they go to in the Nest model, where the Nest model is implemented. But then next, we're going to discuss connection and co-regulation as foundational support to our kids' development of self-regulation and then ultimately advocacy skills. It's very important to build consistency between school and home. We all know that. So we will also talk about strategies that can be brought into your home, like organizing the home environment to support success. And finally, we're going to explore meltdowns and how to support your child during these challenging times. Okay, so yeah, this is how, based on those objectives, the agenda for tonight looks like. We're going to start with behavior through the Nest lens, then we will move on to connection for regulation, home environment, meltdowns, and then hopefully, if I don't speak too slowly, then we have some time for Q&A. I'll be sure that there is some time for Q&A. But again, please feel free to use the chat for any comments, questions throughout the session. Just to ground ourselves, our norms are to acknowledge intention versus impact, and to lean into discomfort together and being open to hearing feedback from each other. I hope that these 3 grounding rules will make you feel valued and respected tonight. Okay, so let's start talking about behavior through the Nest lens. We really believe that behavior interventions, first of all, starts with prevention. And part of the prevention is a shift in perspective, if that needs to be. A shift from viewing behavior as a choice based on personality traits towards acknowledging external and environmental factors and understanding that behavior is a form of communication. And this is because our beliefs about behavior really determines how we respond and how we influence that narrative. So it's really important to start from there. And with that being said, we really try to remember that all behavior happens for a reason, even when we don't know what that reason is. If it's a fun behavior, or it's a productive behavior, or if it's a challenging behavior, we all count it as there is a reason for it, all of them. And at Nest, we work really hard to train and support teams to maintain a posture of curiosity about what's going on with the kids, and try to observe the children so that we can really make sense of their experiences and their intentions and try to find out what they are trying to communicate with us through whatever behavior they're showing. So we definitely really encourage you to, if you're seeing any kind of new behavior, to try to maintain that same posture of curiosity, and then ask, what's going on in this moment and what kind of information you could take in about what's going on to help you to formulate a helpful response. So prevention, yes, but so what is actually behavior? So in Nest, we identified 3 components that we think is important when defining behavior. The first one is communication. We know that it's a deep human need to be understood, and our kids are constantly communicating with us, and we want to be sure that we are seeing what they are trying to tell us, right? So they're constantly communicating with us, and they use behavior to communicate while they're developing other forms of communication. So here you can see the perspective of challenging behavior. Perhaps it's a form of communicating frustration when I'm trying to be understood and tell you what I need, but I'm not succeeding. The amount of frustration that can come along can be really overwhelming. So when we remind ourselves that the behavior that we're seeing means that our kids are trying to tell us something and want to be understood, then our goals become helping them develop more mature communication. So asking the question, what is my child trying to tell me, can be really helpful in those moments. And actually, traditionally, the saying goes that behavior is communication, right? And while we really certainly think that's true and really believe in it, we cannot forget the other stuff happening behind the scenes. And that's why we can get into the second component that we've identified, which is the sensory processing. That is how our brain deals with all the information in the environment that's coming in, and how this information is being sorted and how it's being applied to whatever is going on. So it includes elements of the environment like lighting, sound, temperature, oftentimes smell, the energy of the people in the room and the relationship the kids have with the people in that environment. Maybe a child's interoceptive problem, that is like recognizing what your body signals, like for instance, not reminding you that you need to go to the bathroom is the case. So environment is not really just the physical components of the environment, it's also the communication that is going on in the environment, it's the behavior of others in the environment. They're all part of the environment. And so sometimes a certain thing in the environment sends a child into a stress response. And the behavior that we see is instinctual reaction. So it's giving that impression of maybe misbehaving, but really attuning what children need in their body to better support their sensory needs is very important. And our last component is executive functioning. Oh, sorry, I didn't actually read this question. So asking the question, what is going on in the environment can be really helpful. They all have a little question to kind of like set the, I guess, like for you to kind of think about like the answers into leading into thinking about these components. So our last component is executive functioning. And I can kind of like define that as how the brain deals with all the information that has to come out of the body. It can be like being able to coordinate your thoughts and tasks and movements. And this can be like really difficult, right, for neurodivergent kids because of the different ways that our brains are wired. So nothing is wrong with it. It's just like a different, and so it's a different way that we are responding. And so we are thinking also differently. And executive functioning has a lot to do with working memory. I'm sorry, I have to actually mention, like when I say we, when I refer to neurodivergent, is because I am neurodivergent. I have ADHD, so I'm referring to we. So yeah, executive functioning is a big component, right? It has a lot to do with working memory. It has a lot to do with planning, organizing, prioritizing, and initiating actions, and stopping yourself maybe from continuing a task or shifting attention between tasks. So I guess an example is when a child is facing difficulty to switch between tasks, like between reading a passage and writing a response. Here we can ask, what is tricky, what is challenging about this task that is resulting in this challenging behavior that I'm seeing, right? Okay, I'm not actually open parentheses here about executive functioning. We are questioning the task and not the skills of the individual. I just want to say that because sometimes you will see that your child is maybe engaged in something that they really like to do that is of their interest, and they're not showing, I guess, those executive dysfunctions that you may have noticed in other tasks. So here it's really important to think like, it's not really the child's ability that we are questioning, but we're questioning whatever it is has to do with that. So yeah, these are 3 questions that are really great place to start for you. Oh, sorry, I actually missed something in the chat. Thank you, Katie. Okay, sorry about that. I just read that, but I'm glad that you are here. Okay, so that was basically the three components that we wanted to share with you of how we define what behavior is. But now we're going to talk about connection and co-regulation. Are there any questions about the behavior slide? Okay, so where to start when thinking about your kiddo's behavior, and that is connection and co-regulation. Again, connection is the basis for a human being to feel intrinsically motivated to practically do anything, right? Children obviously need to feel connected to the people around them before any learning or trying new things can happen. We might be doing a lot of different things. We might be providing them with a lot of strategies and great support and great fidgets and amazing visuals, but none of that can really happen if kids don't feel connected with us. So we really think this is very important to build that connection. And the first step to do that is really to think of how we can validate, validating their emotions and giving them the space and the assurance that, yes, we can see you, and yes, we understand. We understand what you're saying. With validation and building that bridge of connection, you know, we kind of like think that this is really the first step to build that bridge. But I also want to mention before going to the next point here that validation is beyond reassurance verbally. So that verbal reassurance is great, but it's beyond that. It can just mean that you are there. You are physically there and you're nodding, or your body language shows that validation, your tone of voice shows validation. It's very important to, especially like our kids when they're in kindergarten and first grade, and also like any other grade, but you know, when they are younger, to try and make sure that you're getting at their eye level. And so all of these things are really important, as well as that verbal reassurance. Lots of times we just think that by saying like, oh, I can see that you're frustrated, this and that, like, yep, that is validation, but there's also just, you don't have to always say something, just being there is also very important. So the next strategy here is to build a connection and to share to build the connection by sharing the why of what the task is, right? That you're asking them to do, or whatever demand that you're putting on them, or any kind of thing that is going on that you think that they might not know, right? That you've never shared the why of. It's really important to share the why of things in general, right? Because we want to support autistic learners in understanding and what they are asked to do, and to kind of help them feel secure and in control of their environment. I guess understanding the why of demands really kind of like, instead of saying like you have to do your homework, or like you have to sit at the dinner table, or you have to like stop playing your video game right now and get to bed, sort of like sharing the why of those can really help manage feelings that come with it, and it really helps with like actually preventing challenging behavior a lot of time. And this really helps with building relationship as well. Like if you think about it, when you're sharing the why, you are presuming competence. You are saying to your child that I believe that you are a valuable member of whatever that we're doing, and your understanding of whatever I'm asking you to do is as important as your reaction to it, right? So that again is really important for them to understand that they are an equal and active participant in what's going on. Yeah, so slowing down and sharing the why. And then the next point here, which is so nice, is to enjoy playtime and time away. And I'm going to explain this a little bit. So it's to make those shared enjoyment, to like the shared enjoyments that are part of being connected in school. It's same like in a classroom when we're in kindergarten and first grade, like a lot of times that happen, but it doesn't have to be at that, that like call it the playtime only, like developmentally appropriate for a certain time. It's really about connecting and knowing what your child is interested in and sharing those moments with them. And actually also thinking that you sharing with them what you're interested in, and so kind of like having a two-way street of communication with them and enjoy playtime together. A lot of times, parents say that, oh, my child is not really sharing with us what's happening in school, or what they want to do, or this and that. And actually, if you think about it, that these can actually come very naturally as well when you are engaged in a playtime with them, or you're engaged in something that they like to do. Like those other conversations can come up that you might find that it's not coming up very naturally otherwise. So keeping that in mind, and time away is also really important. It's a time that it's important to kind of, I guess, thinking that yes, we're doing some things together, but sometimes we need to do some activities apart, like alone, and we all like to do some things independently. So acknowledging that and giving that space and time to have time away from each other. And the last point here is regulation, which is something that we're going to talk about more in a minute, but it's a big goal, right? Regulation is like on every IEP goal almost. And we only get to self-regulation, the big goal, be able to self-regulate by establishing something called co-regulation. That's what we're going to talk about now. So what is co-regulation? Basically, it's supporting another person, whether it's a child or it's an adult, in a way that helps them feel better. It's sort of becoming the external nervous system for a person who's experiencing overwhelm, and model self-regulation for them. So we do that a lot, right? When kids are especially very young, they're babies, like when they're crying, we pick them up and we hold them. We're physically there for them, and we hug them, get at their eye level, and say to them, it's okay that you're frustrated because of X, Y, and Z. And so before really pushing kids into self-regulation, we want to be there for them first and co-regulate with them. I'm going to read this slide. Our kids need us to teach them how to understand and deal with feelings that come up. And so what does that mean? That means we are modeling the use of self-regulation for them during the time of overwhelm. Now, this is, again, like there is no like one way or another, like everything is coming together. There needs to be a safe environment. There needs to be that connection. There needs to be a relationship, and all of this together with an environment that is comfortable and is supportive of our kids' sensory needs. and then co-regulation. So co-regulation is basically, and these are just, I just included some helpful ways to think about how to co-regulate, because it's not really just about keeping our kids calm, but it's about actually making sure that they are recognizing their body signals when they're overwhelmed, and to basically respond to them, because we respond to different feelings differently, so respond to them appropriately. And this is to say that it's not something that is just happening during the time of overwhelm, but it's something that we're constantly talking about at other times. So I'm gonna kind of go through these bullet points. They're important when thinking about co-regulation. Reducing verbal input and why that's important. Okay, so this is actually very important. So verbal input it takes a lot of processing time. And when someone's overwhelmed already, if we are talking a lot to them, that can just lead to more overwhelm. That's just basically how to put it. So having visuals, just like the one on the right-hand side here, a picture of a visual from a classroom, but creating visuals and trying to reduce the verbal input during the time of overwhelm is very important. Also, practicing the strategies that you use with other caregivers. That's also really important to think about, because we don't want to be the only person that is co-regulating with our child. It's really important to communicate what works with your child with their school. And if they have other caregivers like babysitters, then trying to tell them, hey, like this is a visual I made with my kid that works for them when they are feeling overwhelmed. This is like a strategy they're trying to learn to regulate, and you can refer to that. And this is what you need to know. So trying to kind of have multiple caregivers to co-regulate. It also helps your child to not have so much dependence on you. This point, collaborate with your school team. Yeah, obviously. So that's really important. We don't want to come up with like a lot of different strategies, different ones for home, different ones for school, but to have the ones that we have in our bucket. So it's important to collaborate with schools and let them know what is happening at home that's working, or actually asking them what has worked in school. And practicing when calm. So I explained this a little bit, but it's just basically to be reminded that what is the big goal? The big goal is that they learn to self-regulate, and then they learn to self-advocate. And how can that be? That can only be when they can process and reflect on what's working. Processing and reflecting is never happening when a child is overwhelmed. It's never going to happen. So the teaching points, or the times that they can reflect and say, you know, like, hey, I noticed that you get overwhelmed when such and such happens. So do you think this strategy works? Like, this strategy works for me. Does it work for you? Okay, great. Then you can practice together. Like if it's breathing, then you can practice breathing at the times that they are calm as well. And again, sticking to what you know. To the next slide. Okay. So here's a note on stimming. This is something that often comes up in conversations around regulation, which is stimming. And I'm going to address it here. So stimming, sometimes also called restrictive repetitive behavior, is a natural response to stress and anxiety. This restrictive repetitive behavior, which is coming up in in another slide too, it's basically the language that's used in the diagnostic statistician manual, the DSM, and it's a very negative language, restrictive and repetitive behavior. But really, like, what we want to let you know that our approach in Nest program is that stimming is a natural response to stress or anxiety, and also it is a natural way of expressing joy as well. So it's not just about the time when a child is feeling stressed, but sometimes it is a joy response actually. And it just really depends on you knowing your child and knowing what those moments are, right? So also, like, there's another myth that it's only in the autistic community that stimming happens, but that's really not true, right? We all use it. I know, like, for instance, what works for me, like the stimming that works for me is that when I am sitting for a long amount of time, for me to stay regulated, I move my legs a lot. Or another example could be sitting in a rocking chair. The gentle movement in the rocking chair can be very soothing for most of us. I guess some people play with fidgets, or they click their pens, or play with their hair, or any kind of sensory input that's going to help with sort of certain feeling, right? So we do not really, we absolutely do not encourage teachers and therapists to stop children from stimming. I just want to be very clear about that. We instead ask them if a child is stimming, to sort of ask the question, is there something that I can change in the environment to make things less stressful? Obviously, if the stimming seems to be out of stress. That's really important. We're never really trying to stop a child from stimming, and we know that that's really regulating for them, but we're trying to always remove the threat in the environment, whatever it is. So are they really, I guess, like in a position where they are not feeling comfortable, then what can I do about that? And another question to ask is, are they hurting themselves or others? And only if that statement is true, then you can try and find an alternative behavior. Otherwise, just let them be. It is great to have these kinds of regulation tools. Actually, it's really wonderful, and it's to celebrate. Like jumping up and down and hand clapping and rocking. It's really not harmful to them or anyone around them. So yeah, I guess another point here is a child needs that opportunity to stim, and it can be an act of it can act as a break and relax and reorganize them. And so again, this is really important because in classrooms, especially if we're noticing that a child needs to stim and for whatever reason they're not comfortable to stim there, then we want to really create that space for them to be able to do so. So whether it's going to the break area or going to a different place to be able to freely do so. That's really important. So creating that space for them. Okay, so if there are no questions here or any comments here, I can move on to the next slide. Okay, gonna move on. Okay, so what some self-advocates tell us about the importance of stimming, and this is the slide that I was saying will come up again about that restrictive repetitive behavior, which is in the DSM-5. That's what they're referring to stimming. So Fergus Murray is a self-advocate, amazing self-advocate who is from Edinburgh. And he tells us that restrictive and repetitive behavior are a natural response to feeling of instability. They allow you to assert control over what is happening and feel safer. The ability to feel in control is central to all humans. And that's perfectly put. We all need to feel in control of our bodies, and we all need to feel like we have some control over the situation in which we are in and in which we find ourselves. And if stimming helps our children to really accomplish that, then that's great. Okay, so actually, these pictures on this slide sort of shows different types of stimming, right? This one on the left-hand side, it can be sometimes, like orally. And then the one in the middle, it can be like sometimes, just like putting the cars in order. So it's organizing, it can be visually, right? So stimming can be visually, it can be sometimes it can look like just staring, right? So that's also visual stimming. And then the one on the right-hand side, it can be physical. I guess it's also important to say that anytime we offer a tool, we try to help our kids make the connection with that tool and understand that it indeed is helping for their sensory needs. Because we ultimately want them to advocate for what they need. So it's very important, like if you're deciding that your child, for instance, needs the oral stimulation, then if you are offering a tool for that, then it's very important to have that conversation or help them understand that this is helping for this reason. So slide, guess like home environment. I actually just saw a Q&A, which I guess we can get to and talk a little bit more about it at the end. Thank you for using the Q&A function, but it is about the slide before. So I'm just gonna try and read it. What about verbal stimming, constantly asking the same questions or phrases, asking questions the same way? Should we try to model different language or let them continue? Okay, and I see Katie is answering already. Yeah. So Katie's my colleague who's also here tonight, and she just answered, this is a common thing, but it really depends on the student. Katie, do you want to actually unmute, or your typing is okay? I can read it because I don't think everyone can see the Q&A function.
Oh, sure, I can unmute. I was just saying that this is a really specific to the child, specific to the situation, and so I would hate for us to give advice when we don't know your kiddo. But oftentimes it's coming from one of two places. One would be, I'm a very poor typer, sorry. It's better for me to speak out loud. Huh? One is that a student might find comfort or predictability in this type of repeated phrase. And so that's the situation where it's okay if they're repeating these phrases. They're sort of organizing the world, making sense of things, getting some predictability. The other situation in which a kid might constantly ask the same types of questions or say the same phrases is if they're trying to communicate something, but they don't know how to say it yet. And so really looking at sort of what's going on in each of these situations and trying to get to the bottom of what might be happening, because you would go about those in two pretty different ways. But I do think that's a really great question to take back to your school-based team, because they can talk about what happens at school, what they might do, what they might see.
Thank you. That's a really great point. And again, to take these specific questions about your child to your school, because obviously they also know them better and they can really kind of unpack that with you. So I'm going to go now to the next part of our session. And I also noticed that it is 7:10, so we're actually on time. Great. Okay. So one of the things that that we do in Nest classrooms across all grades is that we think about how we can structure the environment to minimize not just the distraction, but to minimize the possibility of dysregulation. So we build in a lot of predictability into the environment, and that shows up in different ways. Here are a few home examples, right? We've got things like calendars or structured play and assigned work areas. And those are things that happen in school that also can happen at home. So providing those experiences that are rewarding and fun and engaging and pleasurable for children that will really help them increase that, I guess, like participation as well. And I want to say. We also try to think about how to make the environment really calming. So that's the point, calming and soothing environments. That's really important. So really avoiding bombarding children with too many tools or too many games or resources that could really result into, I guess, unnecessary stress. So we're going to look at a couple of examples, actually. Okay, so the first is visual support. So how to basically create an environment that is going to create predictability and reduce stress. One way of doing so is the visual support. All of the research and all the autistic self-advocates that have given us information, or we've gathered information from different self-advocate research and blog posts, really tells us that this is like really one thing that is helpful for almost everyone. Visual supports are really, really important. Many autistic people are visual processors, and so that means that we present information in a visual way, and that to kind of like make it more likely for them to understand. And here are basically this visual on this slide, and there are some really couple of points that I want to read that talks about the importance of using visuals. The first one is visuals are permanent, right? If we are giving directions verbally, we give like a couple of directions, and then those directions verbally, they're gone. So visuals are something that make things that you can always refer back to. Another one is visuals allow time for language processing. That's really important as well. I think this goes really hand in hand with making a space first, like visually supporting, and also less visually distracting. It makes sense, perfect sense, why autistic people actually report that they are visual learners or like that visual processors. And it makes sense. So if there's too many things or too many visuals, that can be really overwhelming. And if there's the right visuals that is about like predictability, whatever that the routine is, or the regulation skills that we're trying to learn, and the visual of it is there, then that's actually very helpful as well for the language processing. Visuals prepare, obviously, students for transitions like this first and then forward. Like first we're doing this, then you're doing that. So that's again, the predictability and what's coming next. Visuals help kids see what you mean. Visuals are transferable between environments and people, and that's again really, really important. If your kid is having a sleepover at a friend's house, if they're going to their grandma's house, or if you are all going on vacation together, so knowing that you can create a visual schedule of whatever, and we're going to talk about schedule in a second, but visual support of calming strategies, visual supports of transitions of what's coming next, or the schedules, so that all can be really helpful to take with you to the other contexts that they're in. And visuals can really help reduce anxiety. This is really true because when, for instance, most of the time, like this is like an essential thing in Nest, is that we're using visual timers, for example. How does that really reduce anxiety? Well, it's really important to know how long something is going to take. And this is really important to validate, again, that sort of autistic communication, like how long are we going to be here? What is going to be next? So all of this is, when we have the visual of it, we don't have to really engage in so much also verbal processing of things. We can always just like refer to them and have it available. I guess like this one, visuals have no attitude. It's really true, right? There's no tone of voice with demanding something when we just have like the visual of it available. Some more examples of what some things like that we use in Nest classrooms you might have already seen, like the voice level. There's a visual of it. And like especially the one on the left, it also has like the context in which we are using different voice levels to put it, make it more sharing the why, right? So why am I having level 2 voice? Well, because I'm talking at a table and sharing with a partner, and that's the context I use level 2. So this one over here, it's like more for maybe younger kids. It's just kind of like pictures of the situations where they're using different voice levels. Okay, so visual support examples, some like at home. I'm going to start from the right-hand side, the routines. This one is, I'm a big fan of actually like hand-drawn visuals. I really like them. This one is going out of the house, right? There's like a picture of a house, and then you use hand sanitizer, put masks. This one is like during the peak of the pandemic, and then having like social distancing, or coming back to the house, taking off your shoes, wash your hands and your clothes. Again, depending on if your child is a reader or not. Here in the middle, like this one is just an example of brushing teeth. So it's like basically breaking down the task of doing something, which is like, here the task guide of like step 1, step 2, step 3 with the visuals, so that it can also turn into like independently being done. And here there is a choice board. So this is really cute. There's like a choice of bike riding or a drive-in movie, going to the beach, water balloon. And I would say that just in general, using sort of like, if we're giving choices, it's always really important to also include some choices that they would like to see in their schedules, just mentioning it here. But so that one's a choice board. And the one on the left-hand side here is for cleaning up, like putting the labels on the bins, plastic toys, sensory items, so then you know where to find things, and it's really helpful for everyone, obviously. But some examples of like, definitely this is something that we do in the Nest classrooms. Everything's labeled, and it's really important to include visuals on different tasks. And this one is so this is the visual schedule, right? So there are two pictures here. It really could be in any form that you like. You know, this one is just like pages of a notebook with post-its, or this one's on like a board in the kitchen. So arranging the day in chunks is something that we recommend. Again, depending on if they can read time or not, it can be like morning time, afternoon time, late afternoon, evening, or if you're doing it in chunks, then it's like 9 to 9:30, 10 to 10:30. Considering strengths and interest and frustration tolerance, it's really important, right? Including interest in a child's schedule is so important. And just thinking about like what their needs are, like if they wake up really energized, then thinking about what to include in their schedule, if it's like a movement in the morning, or if you think that like your child is more you know, feeling quickly tired after school, then keeping like those, I guess, like screen times or whatever it is that keeps them more like regulated, or the afternoon time for later in the day. And again, using what you know about your child, balance and ground, include your needs, and take it day by day. And I think like I would first start with like here, include your needs. What does that mean? That means that if you need a break and you need some time to yourself, or you want to do whatever you want to do that does not include your child in it, then you can put that in their schedule too. So including that. And then it is so important to remember that your like this all of this is like never gonna really 100% work all the time. So really taking it day by day and thinking about your own needs as well. I am realizing that time is moving real quick, so I'm just going to quickly read what the self advocates had to say about routines. And Dan, aged 11, spoke of how a visual schedule was imposed on him, but this only served to frustrate him, as he neither wanted nor needed it. So again, getting their input, and not just saying you need to do, this is your schedule and that's what you're going to do, but like really try to reflect on it. Sometimes like you need to change a schedule together, or if there is a change in this schedule, sharing the why of that change. The why of the change is really, really important, because just saying something's changed is just not going to really be helpful in them understanding, and it can really cause dysregulation again. Having flexibility. 16-year-old Rose spoke of how having the flexibility to work at her own pace within her own routine on a project of interest enabled her to feel relaxed. So being flexible is also very, very important. Nothing is like really set in stone in any way in life. And quickly, I'm just going to show you the pictures of break areas. Break areas at Nest are essential. You may have noticed in a classroom of your child at pickup or drop off, there is a break area, and it's really important to know that break areas are to be built in a way that creates privacy for kids. It's not like in the middle of the classroom, it's really apart, and it's just somewhere that teachers can monitor the break, you know, check in and make sure that kids are ready when they're coming back in by asking them if they're ready. But like at the same time, they are not really out there that like doesn't give any privacy for kids, because that's like very, very, very important. And thinking about creating this at home could be, it really doesn't, you know, it doesn't have to be like a big space away. Sometimes like some families use like, they have like a chair that's like the break area chair, and they have this deal with their child that if they need to take a break, then they're not going to talk to them when they sit in that chair and giving them that space. So whatever it is, like we also really recommend portable break areas. Like, what does that mean? That means like if like it's like, I don't know, like a comfortable blanket that's like their break time that they can like use. So then if you are really traveling a lot, then you can like take that with you, and that's like a sign of break. That's the time that you give them space and you don't talk to them. Or if you yeah, like I guess like driving in the car like a lot together, so that's another way of thinking about like, we have the same rules. If you need break, then you can have that time. And our break areas usually have like a basket of fidgets that works for them. So whatever is for their sensory needs is there. So that's another portable thing that you can take with you wherever you go. Am I missing something here? I think covered the break areas. And some break area activities, like other than the fidgets, it can be like square breathing visual, like you practice self-regulation, square breathing. You can have that visual, or whether it's drawing or listening to music, it can be sensory input things. All right, so we're gonna have just like a quick note on meltdowns. I'm really sorry that I'm like kind of going really fast now, but I would hate to keep you longer. So meltdowns, it's really important to mention it because meltdowns are different than sort of tantrums, and we want to really talk about that here. I'm going to read Maddie Engel and Self Advocate's note on meltdown. Now, if someone was to ask me to sum up just what exactly an overload or meltdown is in one sentence, I think my answer would be: an overload is a reaction to a situation in which the brain has trouble to sort, process, understand, or express various kinds of information. What we're trying to say is that meltdowns are not by choice. It's not like a tantrum where you are asking for what you need and you are stomping your feet and saying, give me what I need, which like usually when a kid gets what they need at that time, it's also valid, like, you know, it's a challenging behavior that's a form of communication, but it is not a top-down communication. It's not something that they choose, they think about it, they say, okay, like I don't know how I can show my frustration, so this is how I'm going to do it. But it's like literally there is no choice involved there. And this is very important to keep in mind with meltdowns. So there's usually a cycle that it happens. It starts with rumbling, and you can see that sort of happening. Sometimes it happens really quick and it goes into meltdown. But if it's in the stage of rumbling, like you can see, like depending on the way your child is with this stage, you know, like sometimes it's just like moving really slowly, moving really quickly, whatever it is that is their trait, but the way they are. But rumbling during this time, you can redirect and soothe. But if it really gets to the point of meltdown, then that's where you want to just give space, reduce any input, and listen to what the behavior is communicating. So this is very important. It's not a time to do any sort of verbal communication. It's just to give that space for the course of meltdown to end. And I want to say there is some consciousness there, so don't worry really about like, you know, self-injury or something like that, but just like kind of like be on the lookout, make sure everyone's safe, make sure they're safe, but at the same time, don't be in their space. Give them space to run the course of their meltdown. Oftentimes we're just worrying about whether a meltdown is going to happen or not. And I just want to also say that this is very natural thing that happens. So don't worry about it so much. And just when it happens, just give them space to run that course. Sometimes, like some self-advocates have said, that meltdowns are actually a sort of like healthy way for them to regulate, like to just kind of like come out of so much overwhelm. So like, it's okay. They're feeling safe with you when they're going to meltdown, and let them have that space. And after the meltdown is over, then that's the time to slowly recover and reflect. And I say slowly because when meltdown happens, there's a lot of adrenaline that comes into the body. And so after the meltdown, it's a very sensitive time. It's not like right after. You can't really sit and talk to your child and say like, okay, so what happened or whatnot. Like that's, you need to actually have some distance from the event and reflect on it very slowly, and let it, let that sort of like take its time, and them to really feel safe to come back to you. Yeah, so I'm just gonna, I guess, skip this. Is the same thing. It's just that showing that a meltdown might look different for autistic people. As you can see, it goes up and down a lot because there are different things in the environment based on their sensory need that can keep re-triggering them. So be mindful of that and just give them that space, and sort of like try to slowly reflect afterwards. And lastly, this is a visual of shutdown, and we thought this is very important to include here, because a meltdown and shutdown are two different things. While meltdown is something that you can see, it's outward, it's kind of extrinsic. Shutdown is intrinsic. It's when you literally go inside and internalize everything. Autistic shutdown is like an internalized meltdown. While the person is experiencing a lot of emotions, they can't express them outwardly. So like, it may look like, I'm just gonna, there's something in front of my slide. Okay. It may look like this: zoning out, enthusiasm or falling asleep, hiding or in a defensive position. And here, allistic or non-autistic people. So how can allistic folks help? Safety first, help them to go to a quiet space and minimize stimuli. This is also same for meltdown. Be sensory sensible, have a kit tailored to their needs, and eliminate all expectations and all demands during that time. Try to reduce any sort of interaction and just give space. And lastly, this is very important, so I'm going to read it. And sorry, it's already 7:33. Autistic shutdown is not stubbornness, laziness, disrespect. Autistic shutdown is involuntary, it's painful, and it's exhausting. So please be patient and compassionate. So this is really, really important to see that it's not a top-down behavior. It's not based on choice. It's like literally a lot of overwhelm coming out when it's meltdown, or going in when it's shut down, and it's exhausting. So being mindful of that and giving them space and time. Okay, well, I guess I can skip the self-advocate, or I can just like quickly read it actually, because I love this one. If you have a young person with emotional regulation difficulties and they are trying to talk themselves down when they had a bad start, just shush and let them talk themselves down. This is a big step for many students, I know. Moving away and shushing or saying soothing, validating things is de-escalation. It's like the adults in these situations or settings have forgotten what it's like to be small, young, and have a limited coping repertoire. So yes, like this does not mean ignoring the behavior like a meltdown. That definitely is a recipe for disaster, and that's not what it means. But it is to say that sometimes just trying to soothe when someone's going through this shutdown is not helpful. it's actually harmful. So we want to give them again space to have their moment. Okay, so these are just takeaways of today. Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry that I had to kind of like speed up a little bit. But I hope that it was helpful. Okay, I'm going to go back. So the first point is basically we talked about challenging behavior, having a mind shift of that. Thank you, Marilyn. So basically thinking of challenging behavior as a stress response. Try to keep your kids safe and giving them space. Co-regulation and movement is very important, and our first steps to self-regulation, and always remember to be validating. I think like those are good takeaways from today. And yeah, now we're today. I'm gonna stick around. Katie, you can go if you. I'm sorry, I was a little bit bad with timing today, but this is a great book to sort of look into. It's fantastic. It's called Thinking Person's Guide to Autism, and we also included in the handout that I think I'll be sending with a recording. You can always go and check our website. There are past speakers that talk that have great, recordings of them that you can access on our website. And again, like this book is really great. It's like different articles by the parents of autistic children, and some of those autistic children and adults themselves talking about their experiences and understanding of their needs and their talents and interests. So it's a great book. I'm gonna stop talking and stop the recording.